Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we'll be taking up the important articles from 6th of February's newspaper. So, the first important article is regarding, you can see in the picture that there was a hot air balloon in the airspace of USA, but it was that of China. So US, it shoots down that balloon, and Beijing now warns of response to this. China says that it was a civilian weather balloon that drifted off the course, but USA called it a surveillance balloon, and now USA had shot it down. And such Chinese balloons, they have been spotted over Asia also, including the Andamans even. So Chinese authorities, they maintained that it was a civilian airship used for meteorological purposes, and Chinese military said that it now reserves the right to take the same measures if a similar situation arose in future. And the US use of force is a clear overreaction and a serious violation of international practice. So this is one thing, and we already know that relations between US and China, they are not good as of now, and there's a trade war also going on between them. And yeah, so these are two major powers in the world right now, which are not in good terms with each other. Then Kerala, it will soon seek to amend the Kerala Registration of Marriages Common Rules 2008 to enable the registration of such marriages, basically the marriages between homosexual couples. And when we talk about the legality of homosexual couples' marriages, they are not yet legal in India, and this issue is being discussed and it is there in the Supreme Court, so it is sub judice. And the absence of any reference to transgender persons in the marriage laws of any religion or the common rules enacted in the state. So, because of any mention regarding such types of marriages, Kerala plans to alter the registration rules regarding marriages. So Prime Minister, he is going to visit Karnataka. So he's firstly going to open up the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited's helicopter factory and laying down the foundation stone for Jal Jeevan mission. So the main objective of this mission is to make available, make accessible piped water supply to all the rural households. And apart from that, he'll also kickstart the India Energy Week. So, this article is extremely important. It is about just energy transition. So, since we talk about investing more in clean energy initiatives, shifting towards clean energy, reducing our coal dependence. So, this article is talking about what should be the elements of just energy transition, which is justiciable, which has equity, and likewise. So, the just energy transition partnerships, it is emerging as one of the key mechanisms for multilateral financing by developed countries to support an energy transition in developing countries. So we've been talking about that the developed world must provide finance to the developing countries, obviously, because developing countries cannot invest such a huge amount for energy transition. And there have been, like in past, there have been three such just energy transition partnerships that have been signed, and that includes countries like South Africa, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And now India is considered the next candidate for this just energy transition partnership. So India's G20 presidency, that could potentially be an opportune moment to forge a deal, and India must develop a coherent domestic just energy transition strategy also for this thing. And so the main question is, what would a just energy transition strategy for India look like? What elements must be there to make it just in nature? And what can India offer and seek from a multilateral just energy transition partnership? So, firstly, we'll take up what are the issues regarding energy transitions. So, firstly, it can give rise to intragenerational intergenerational and spatial equity concerns. And these terms, they've already been taken up in a separate video on Ansarkari, so you can have a look at that. And so this is going to the basically the energy transition initiatives and projects that would be affecting the near-term fossil fuel dependent jobs, and it would be shrinking the state's capacity to spend on welfare programs, because that those financial resources would be diverted to these projects, which would be ensuring our transition towards clean energy. So this is first concern. Then the existing just energy transition partnership deals which have been done by three countries, so they pay limited attention to the intragenerational inequities, such as the job losses resulting from the coal phase down. And among the three such deals signed so far, only South Africa deal, it mentions a just component, that is funding reskilling and alternative employment opportunities in the coal mining regions. So we can say that in case of South Africa's deal, it has this just component which is taking into consideration the funding, the reskilling of the people, and the people who will be out of their jobs, who were like earlier involved in the coal sector. So an alternative employment opportunity for such types of people is a component of the deal of South Africa. So the other two such deals, they are focused on mitigation finance for the sector specific transitions. So they're just mainly talking about the mitigation finance that is required. And so the when we talk about any deal that India would be going ahead with in future. So reported that the negotiations, they remained stalled over whether and how India should consider a coal phase down and how to operationalize India's just transition. So we are already in negotiations, we're already in discussions and talks regarding such deal, but the talks, they remain stalled because we are not clear about how we should go ahead in case of coal phase down and how to operationalize this just transition. So energy transition in the industrialized world, it involves a natural tapering of the energy consumption alongside fuel switching to the clean energy sources. So this is how we see that in the developed countries, in the West countries, in the Western world, how they are transitioning towards cleaner energy. First component is that they taper down the energy consumption because they're already developed. And secondly, they switch to clean energy sources as a fuel. But in case of India, we cannot reduce our energy consumption because we are a developing country. We're still in our development stages. So we expect, as per estimates, that our energy demand is going to increase by 2030. And an estimate by the Central Electricity Authority, it projects a near doubling of our electricity demand by 2030. So in case of India or in case of developing countries, the scenario is different, and India cannot afford to put its development on hold while decarbonizing. So these two things, they need to go in tandem while we come up with such a deal and ensure a just energy transition. So what should be the path to a clean energy? So we have committed to clean energy with ambitious targets like 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuels, including 450 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity addition and 43% renewable energy purchase obligations by 2030. So these are some of the ambitious targets. And so these targets, they are already being supported by some complementary policy and legislative mandates. So in case of the legislations, we have the Energy Conservation Amendment Act. In case of missions that we launched, we have one of the most important ones is the National Green Hydrogen Mission. Then, in case of fiscal incentives, we have the production linked incentive schemes. And in case of market mechanisms, we have an upcoming national carbon market. So, these are some of the initiatives that have already been taken up by the government and which are working. So, but these are not enough. We require some additional supplementary measures in order to achieve the targets. And this article is basically presenting us three set of actions that could further expedite India's energy transition while also addressing our domestic developmental priorities and justice and equity concerns. So what are these three steps going to be? So these are extremely important. The first one is acceleration in the renewable energy deployment rates to match the pace of demand growth of energy, and that is critical to India's just energy transition. So it is regarding increasing the deployment rate of renewable energy, because obviously we expect and we have estimates that as per forecasting our energy demand is going to double up by 2030. So when we increase the deployment rate of the renewable energy, that would be met, and obviously it will ensure reduction in case of our dependence upon coal. And meeting India's 2030 target requires accelerating the non-fossil capacity addition from 16 gigawatt a year in 2022 to 75 gigawatt a year by 2030. So this is one thing that's how it should go ahead with. And India missed the 2022's target of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. Then shifting the energy demand pattern in ways. So shifting the energy demand patterns in ways that enable faster renewable energy capacity addition, that could include some measures that has been suggested under this point one. So it can be like solarization of the agricultural electricity demand. We can go ahead with electrification of the diesel powered MSME sectors, then decentralization of renewable energy for the residential cooking and heating. And second point can be that domestic manufacturing of clean energy components is critical to sustain a just energy transition, build energy self-sufficiency, and then tap the green jobs promise of 21st century energy. So the challenge here is in achieving the cost competitiveness, because Indian components, if we go ahead with domestic manufacturing, so they are already 20% costlier than the Chinese components. So we are dependent upon China when it comes to importing such components. So the way around this is to negotiate access to the markets outside India as part of this partnership to reduce the cost gap through economies of scale. So this can be the second step. And thirdly, there is a case for realigning the current use of coal resources so that we can increase our efficiency until the period of phase down. So as an immediate measure or as a short-term measure, we can go ahead with realigning the current use of coal resources. So in that case, we can optimize the use of coal-fired power plants closer to where coal is mined. So this is extremely an important thing that should be considered, because this would enable the coal to be used more efficiently, because the transportation of coal is more energy intensive than the transmission of the electrons, basically the transmission of energy and electricity that is generating using the coal. So the transportation cost of coal is more expensive and energy intensive. So it will lead to cheaper power. And the transportation, it accounts for 1/3 of the cost of coal for the power plant. So that would be eliminated. And so there would be two benefits, that it would like increase the efficiency and it would reduce the cost of electricity, and it would indirectly reduce the emissions also, because we are now improving upon our efficiencies of working. And also, since transportation cost would be eliminated or reduced to the minimum level, so that would help in indirectly reducing the emissions also. So this is an extremely important idea and third point. And so all these measures, they will not only address the equity concerns, but they would be creating new job opportunities. They would be achieving the emissions reduction and prepare the country for deeper decarbonization through a future coal phase down. So the investment requirements for this transition, they are beyond the means of the domestic mobilization of the developing countries. So that's how these just energy transition partnerships, they become important, because developing countries, they require the financing for phasing down their coal dependence and coal usage and moving towards clean energy. Then it has been witnessed that there are discrepancies in the All India Survey for Higher Education report. So significant inconsistencies were observed in the population projections and the gross enrollment ratio calculations. So here one point that has been highlighted is that the 2020-21 report, it uses the population projections based on 2011 census, and the 2019-21 used the 2001 census data. So because of that, we are seeing that there are a lot of inconsistencies and discrepancies in this year's data. So here, an important thing becomes that the main foundations of policy formulation or forming any schemes and programs is the data. So if we cannot trust the data, so that is obviously a major concern that needs to be addressed, and only then we can have like the right forecast and the right policies as per the requirements. Then looking at news and numbers, so firstly, we see that Russia's revenue from oil and gas exports has been impacted by about 30%. And next up, we see that the government, it has banned or it has blocked around 232 applications which were found involved in betting, gambling, and money laundering, and also engaged in unauthorized loan services. So that is another thing. And apart from that, we are seeing a six-fold increase in the total number of voters since 1951, but almost one-third of them, they stayed away from the Lok Sabha polls, the last Lok Sabha poll. So we see that most of the peoples were there in the urban areas who stayed away from voting. Then fourthly, we see that the foreign investors, the FPIs, they withdrawed around 28,852 crore rupees from the Indian capital market in January. And this is the worst outflow in the last 7 months. And this is majorly because of the attractiveness of the Chinese market since they were opened up. And apart from that, obviously, USA has been increasing the interest rates, so that becomes an, we can say, a safer investment option for the investors. But we see that the capital outflows, they negatively impact our currency, so they would add up to the pressure upon the Indian rupee, and we can expect that it might depreciate further. So again, an extremely important topic regarding open artificial intelligence, and we've been talking about ChatGPT also. So ChatGPT, it was developed by Open Artificial Intelligence, so that has gained wide popularity for its innovative language model, and from streaming the business operations to simplifying the research, all of these have limitless possibilities. So we can first have a look at in which all areas we can see the usage of open AI. So obviously it has the time saving benefits. So firstly, in data analysis, it can be used in the process of collecting, cleaning, and analyzing the data to provide insights. Secondly, in case of research, it can be used in collecting and analyzing the information for the academic or professional research. Thirdly, in social media management, it plays an important role in healthcare sector, in medical diagnosis, in finance, in case of stock prediction, in agriculture for crop predictions, for transportation sector in traffic optimization, and lastly in energy sector for power consumption. So these are different areas. There are almost around 8 points that are there. So these can be like written in the mains answer if there is a question regarding artificial intelligence. So what is open artificial intelligence? So basically, artificial intelligence, it is a field of computer science that focuses on creating machines and computer programs that can perform the tasks that typically require the human intelligence. So that is what is artificial intelligence is. And when we talk about human intelligence, so they can like understanding the natural languages, they can recognize images, and they can play a role in making decisions. So we are clear with what is artificial intelligence. Then we come to machine learning. So, machine learning is a field within the artificial intelligence that involves training a computer system to learn from data rather than being explicitly programmed. So, here the main thing is, or the main difference is that a computer system is to learn from the data. And thirdly, we have deep learning. So it is a type of artificial intelligence that tries to depict the human brain. So it uses large amount of data to learn, train, and improve their performance over time. So all these three things, three components, they have a very thin line of difference, but this can be asked in prelims also. And coming to various uses of open artificial intelligence, we've already seen that. So basically, it uses a powerful language model, which is called GPT-3, through a simple and easy to use interface. Apart from that, it also supports multiple languages like English, Spanish, French, and German. And businesses and individuals, they can save a lot of time and efforts by automating tedious and time consuming tasks. But again, it can be like having a negative impact in the jobs, on the jobs of the people, and might increase the layoffs. So that is there. And again, talking about the green energy transition. So here, since India is hosting G20 meeting this year, so mainly here, our minister RK Singh, so he has to say that what is important is, or what the world should talk about regarding the transition towards clean energy, should be access to finance, and secondly, that finance, it should be low cost. And apart from that, he says that energy transition with energy security is the key thing. So this is what like what we discussed in the editorial section also, that with increasing energy demand in India, it is important that we are able to meet that energy demand along with a transition towards clean energy. So that is what is being summarized in this single sentence, that energy transition with energy security is the key. And talking about India's position and some targets. So, India ranks among the top 5 nations in the Global Climate Change Performance Index. And we also reached our 2030 target of ensuring 40% installed capacity in non fossil sources by 2021 only. And the current capacity of the non fossil sources is at around 42%. So, the country's per capita emission, it was only one third of the global average. So, it is very low in case of India. And we also had a mandate to achieve net zero emissions by 2070. Secondly, reach 500 gigawatt of power capacity from the non-fossils by 2030. Thirdly, get 50% of its energy requirements from the renewable energy by 2030. So these are some targets. And apart from that, the first energy transition working group meeting is going to be there, and the main focus areas would be energy transition by addressing the technology gaps, the low cost financing for the energy transition, the energy security, diversified supply chains, energy efficiency, fuels for the future, and universal access to clean energy. So again, these points are very important. Now, talking about the three main concerns for India in case of the global factors, which are very important for us to keep an eye on. So, the first one is the significant slowdown in the global economy in the general consensus. It is obviously a general consensus today. So, if there is a slowdown, so it will have an impact on our export sector and it will pose a downside for our growth. Second concern is regarding inflation. So it is somewhat moderating in major economies. And as a result, the central banks, they are no longer very aggressive in increasing their policy rates. But recently, the US Fed, it has increased the policy rates, and obviously that has implications for the capital flows. So we also had a look at the figure that in January we witnessed one of the biggest and highest amount of capital outflows from the Indian economy. And the third concern is the global prices of major commodities, which includes oil, gas, and some major metals. So if the economies, they are going to witness a slowdown, so we are expecting that the prices would come down. But at the same time, we also have Russia-Ukraine war going on, which could impact the prices of oil and gas. So these are the three main concerns and major challenges which you should be aware of and should be on your tips. Apart from that, we are seeing that the private investment as of now, it is picking up, but it is not large enough to be primary driver of the growth in India. So we have strong macroeconomic fundamentals. Our domestic demand sector is playing an important role when it comes to our GDP growth. So that is there, and in the budget we saw that government has been conservative in estimating its revenues and realistic on the expenditure, with a prudent fiscal consolidation and obviously a push for the capital expenditure. And railway sector, it is set to fill around 1.35 lakh vacancies. But when we look at the figures of the aspirants, it is at around, oh, sorry, not rupees, it is at around 3.65 crore aspirants. They had applied for various posts between 2020 and 22. So that's how you can find out the ratio. And apart from that, we are seeing that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is getting highly active in Pakistan, and this is majorly because of and after the coming in power of Taliban in Afghanistan. So we already know that Pakistan is also going through an economic crisis, and apart from that, the terrorist activities are also increasing there. Now we'll take up the Financial Express. So smaller rural spending, it will be keeping the consumption demand low. So we can expect not like a higher amount of rural consumption demand. So allocation for the core rural sector schemes, they are down by 16% over the financial year 2023's revised estimates. So that is going to be a weak link, weak area in terms of the contribution to the growth. And Prime Minister is also going to launch E20. E20 is the petrol blended with 20% ethanol, and he'll be also unveiling a solar and conventional energy powered cooking system. So that is there, and obviously he'll be launching the India Energy Week 2023. And when we have a look at the overall effective corporate tax rate in India, so in financial year 2018, it was at around 29.5%, and in financial year 2021, it has come down to 22.2%. So that was one initiative that was taken by government by reducing the corporate tax rate. And apart from this, having a look at the figures in terms of the capital expenditure boost. So when we have a look at the trend of it, so right now it is at the effective capital stands at 13.7 percentage, and not percentage, sorry, I guess it is 13.7 trillion rupees. And when we have a look at the trend, also you can see the orange bar graph that is increasing with each financial year. So that is for the capital expenditure, and we are seeing a 10% increase this financial year. And apart from that, having a look at different sectors which are in terms of the pickup in the capital spending. So the major one is in the railways, then we have roads and defense. Apart from that, we have like Jal Shakti and affordable housing. So these are the main areas of capital expenditure which are under focus by the government. And apart from that, the first figure, the first graph, it is showing the quarterly response of the GDP growth to 1% of GDP rise in the government expenditure. So when there is a 1% increase of GDP rise in the government expenditure, we see that GDP increases by 1.7%. So this is given on quarterly basis, and this is there. So this is, we can understand in terms of the multiplier effect of the capital expenditure. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari, and you will get the PDF link in the description box. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share this video as much as possible. Thank you so much for joining us.